Pressing pause, sleeping on, slow motion. Gonna do, yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda. All right, guys, we're here for the second episode. Wow. You know, that boy was the guinea pig, my son, and I have with me, oh my gosh, I'm like trying to hide my excitement, but this full grown woman who used to be my junior friend, who's an adult now. So you've caught us on episode 2 on YouTube, Spark Tomorrow Ministry. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get them subscribers. Harpo Studios, Lionsgate, y'all gonna be looking for me. And it started here at episode 2 with this young lady. I am going to bite the name that I call her, and I'm gonna call her by her government name. I have with us Miss Alexia. Alexia, tell Spark Tomorrow just a little bit about who you are and the young lady you've blossomed to be.
Yeah, okay. So I am Alexia. I just had a birthday. So I'm like getting up there, in age. It's wild. But yeah, so I am a PhD candidate at Iowa State University. So yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor soonish. So that's super exciting. I am back home in the Dallas area. So I lived in Iowa for 10 years while I was going through school. So I'm back home. So yeah, I've known Miss Katrina forever, for a long time, since I was like yay high. Now let's high. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Y'all, this is not fair because I remember this young lady coming into the grocery store where her mom and I sliced ham, turkey, and cheese. And she was like 7, 8 years old. And now this young lady is pursuing her doctorate and just doing some amazing things and making me old. But hopefully this black not cracking. Okay, we're gonna
It's
move on.
not cracking.
So as you know, we're facing some interesting times right now with the things that are going on in the world. So if you could talk to us, um, any high school senior that's listening or anyone that is on that brink of leaving home and trying to figure out their next step, why did you choose Iowa State?
So I chose Iowa State. Basically, there were some schools that I knew that I wanted to apply to, but my dad's perspective is like cast a wide net. So although you have the schools that you think you want to go to, there may be schools that you hadn't considered, but that they want you. So his advice was to go where they want you. And when we say want you, like who's trying to give you some money, right? Who's trying to pay for your education? And so for me, it wasn't really an issue of like, was I going to get in? It was more of who wants to spend money on me, right? And that's where I was going to go. And so, Texas was like my first choice, but my dad was like, okay, apply to all Big 12, and some other schools, some, HBCUs that I was looking at the time and stuff like that. So I probably applied to like at least 20 places. And so when it came to then time of figuring out where I was going to go, I was more so just like, what scholarship offers do I have? What makes the most sense financially? And so if you know some of the schools that, like in Texas, they're the big schools, they don't really want to give you money like that. Even if you're a valedictorian of your class, they may give you a few dollars. And so I was like, well, I want to go somewhere that's going to invest in me. So Iowa State, is a part of the Big 12. And at the time, I don't really know if I had paid attention that they were in the Big 12. But I got a full tuition undergrad scholarship, academic scholarship, I want to point out, because most of the time people assume sports. So a full tuition academic scholarship to go to Iowa State. I got some other offers, but that was the one that was the most. And so it was going to be cheaper for me to go to Iowa State with a scholarship or even without a scholarship than it was going to be to go to Texas. So, I had never been to Iowa, had never visited the campus. Like my first time being on campus was orientation. But I had the mindset of if somebody's willing to invest that much in me, whatever it is, I can withstand it for 4 years. And that's what I did. And so now I am almost 3 degrees later, still there. So, yeah.
Wow. So if you're listening out there, I heard two pieces in Alexia's answer. One, she was getting guidance. So young high school seniors, listen to wisdom. You have all the answers. air quotes, and they're huge air quotes. But I hear this young lady saying she took her father's advice. And I heard her say, cast a wide net. Not only was she ready to go hook him up, and I know a lot about her father, he would have been so excited about hook him up, but her father guided her in not only what could she be interested in, but who was going to invest the most money in her. College is a numbers game, and by numbers, we mean money. And so she listened to wisdom, and then she thought about what was the place on the map that was willing to invest in her. She even said that she did orientation, and that was her first time going to the campus. So let me ask another question. I think I know, but I need you to let the 18 and 17-year-old student know. So did you choose Iowa State because your bestie was going there from high school?
No.
Did you choose it because your boyfriend, your boo, your babe was going to I-State?
Not at all.
Have you seen that high school bestie or high school babe, boyfriend, even since high school?
Nope.
So, class of 2020, I want you here. And she listened to wisdom. She followed where the dollars were at, and that was an academic scholarship. Hello. And because of those things, she is now almost 3 degrees later and probably has very minimal in student loan debt because she listened to wisdom, and it wasn't about my friends from high school and that boy that said he loved me and all the other girls on high school campus. Good for you, young lady. Very well accomplished. Love it. I can do this interview without crying, but you bringing me there, girl. I'm so proud of you. If you could think back to your freshman year, because again, we have lots that are about to leave home, leave the nest, and everything was done for you. Laundry, cooking was done. You could have a bad test grade and then run in mom and dad's room and get a hug. What would you consider was one of your greatest life lessons by the time freshman year ended and you were coming home? Was that 16-hour drive? 12-hour drive. So what do you think was that greatest freshman year life lesson?
Ooh, freshman year. Wow. I would say my greatest lesson was follow the things that make you happy and be unapologetic about who you are and what you care about. And I say that because, so my freshman year, I went in as a chemical engineering major, okay? And I had been to like engineering camps and stuff when I was young. And I was like, oh, this is cool. But of course at camp, they show you the fun stuff. They don't show you in the labs and, you know, taking all math and science classes and struggling. They don't show you that part. And so my purpose for that was like, okay, at the time I was like, let me do something that really like will make me good money, you know, and it's cool enough, you know. So that was my thought process. I knew some folks who were engineers. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like money, cool, great. But in hindsight, like I didn't like math and science. Like it was cool, like science was cool, but it didn't really like me back like that. And so, but I had always had a passion for law. So like in high school, I was in our law magnet and I always wanted to go to law school, but I was like, well, at least, you know, if I decide not to go to law school, if I'm an engineer, I'm still gonna be making decent money. But what happened was I got to college and was like, oh, this is not like we was doing fun experiments in engineering camp. Like this is, I'm taking math, I'm taking trig, algebra 2, calc, like chemistry. I'm taking all of these things, that's it, in like one fun class. And so, I mean, even though I had some support, like people in my classes and stuff, I really was like, this is not really what I was passionate about, and I wasn't following it for the right reasons. So my first semester in college, I had a 1.5 GPA. So I was like, oh, I'm on academic probation. I'm about to get kicked out of school. Like I got to pack up my stuff and go. Like that's where I was at. And it wasn't even a like, oh, I was just out here in the streets like partying and stuff. It was just, I wasn't passionate about that. I mean, I had a tutor, was still failing a class. Like, you know, like I was doing the things that I was supposed to do. And it was like, I wasn't passionate about it. And so that first semester, I really had to like have a come to Jesus meeting with myself. You know, I had to talk to, you know, my dad and be like, listen, like, it's not that I'm just out here like wasting time and people's money, because again, I was on scholarship. So I had to have I think a 2.5 is what I had to have. So I'm like, okay, I'm about to lose my scholarship. I'm about to have to go back home. And my dad was like, well, why not actually major in what you care about? Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to go to law school. Well, he's like, okay, well, why don't you major in criminal justice? And I was like, well, I don't want to be a probation officer. I don't want to be a police officer. Like, it's interesting, but like, I don't want to do the standard, CJ type positions. And he was like, okay, but if that's what you care about, then why not why not major in that? And so I was like, what does that process look like? Because at first I was thinking, like, can I not change my major with my scholarship? Called, made sure that was okay. They were like, yeah, that's fine, just as long as you have, your GPA. So I switched to CJ the second semester of my freshman year and ended up on the dean's list.
Wow.
So it's just a testament to show that when you're following somebody else's dream or following something for money or anything like that, because so-and-so is doing it, if you're always not in it, you're not going to be successful. And sometimes you may look up and you are successful, but you're not happy. And so pretty much almost every semester after that, I ended up on the dean's list. And so just to make that shift, I think that was a life lesson. But then in terms of like being who you are and being authentic and unapologetic, is that you meet a lot of different people. And the people that you hang out with the first 3 weeks when you get on campus, you may not ever see them again until 3 years later. Like, and don't be afraid to don't find support and find community, but make sure that there are people who are really about what you're about. So I had a group of friends who I came in with, and we, had our fun and, we studied together, all that type of stuff or whatever. But then, stuff started getting rocky because people were on different paths. You realize like, I'm not just about, going out and having fun. I'm also about my academics, and so-and-so is not. So I'm gonna have to let her go, or her personality doesn't mesh with mine as much as I thought it did. Or, this person got a boo, so they unchanged. And now, so it's different things. And a lot of times you're like, but no, this is my group. Like, this has to be my group. And it does not. Like, there are thousands of people on your campus. So you don't have to be stuck with these people and I have to write it out with them. Don't get me wrong. And community is important. And there's organizations for that. There's people in your major you might go to or whatever. I'm a strong proponent of having different friend groups, but making sure that whoever you are associated with, that they reflect who you are and not that you're reflecting who they want you to be or who you feel like you should be so that you can have a crew. So those were kind of my main two like lessons, I would say, from my freshman year.
Wow. Went from 1.5, stepping yourself into a math science world based on, the elements of it that you saw in elementary and high school, and then have again a wisdom chat. Spark Tomorrow teens, if you're listening, she had a wisdom chat with her father, and he said, well, what is it that you're passionate about? She did her research. She did not lose her scholarship, and she goes from 1.5. For those of you that are not on that GPA scale, that's a D, all the way to the dean's list. Those of you that don't understand what that means she is getting high honors, 3.0 or higher for dean's list.
3.5.
3.5 or higher is for the dean's list, and that's because she ran in her passion zone. The next thing she said, hey, friends come and go. Community is important, but she didn't stuff herself into a major that didn't fit who she was, and she did not stuff herself into friend circles that were not who she was. Good people or not, they just didn't fit into who she was. So that's like the second week in a row. We heard it from a 17-year-old, don't chase dollars. We're hearing it now from this awesome young woman that you don't chase the dollar, you chase what you're passionate about so that you can not fit, but you can blossom. She just did it right in front of us. Wow. Well spoken, wonderful story. And I just know your parents are more proud than I, but we're going to fight over that. So I hear that you're a member of St. John, and a little bit of you took a little bit of St. John on the road when you went out to I-State. So talk to us about, how you stay grounded in your Christian faith, 12 hours away from home, no mom and dad looking over your shoulders. And what were you able to do within a youth ministry out there in Iowa?
Yeah, so I'm a keep it 100 for the people. When I first went off to school, I was very heavily involved in youth ministry at home. And then when I went off to school, it was like, well, now I have to try to find a church home. And so to keep me from having to do that, then I was like, oh, I'll just watch it online because, our church streams services. And that was cool for like a little bit, but you're not as motivated to like have that connection. If you're like, oh, I'm gonna just roll over and then press play and be like, okay, woo, and that's kind of what it was. And so eventually it just got to a point where like going to church was not a part of my routine anymore. And I think part of that was like I was so caught up at the time with, well, I know whatever church I go to here, it's not going to be like at home, period. Like that was before me even really try to find one, because I'm like, Iowa is predominantly white, and I'm used to being in like a Southern Baptist type church. And so I was like, this is going to be, the music is different, the preaching style is different. And I was caught up in, this is how my relationship with Christ has been formed. And that's what I want it to be. I'm not looking to stray from that. And so really, I mean, to be honest, what it did is that for a few years at least, I wasn't going to church. Like I would try to find a church to go to on Easter for sure. I had to at least eat out of the CME. But
got it.
Right. But so I would do that. But even still, when I would go, I'm like, this just isn't like, I didn't feel fulfilled. It was like I'm going to church because this is what I'm supposed to do, not this is what I want to do, and this is what I have to do in order to be well. And so I really kind of went through a drought of like really going to church. And then eventually I got to the point where, especially like in my master's program, I was going through a lot in terms of academically, personally, and that type of stuff. And it really got to a point where I was like, okay, all right, God, I'm back. What's up? How you doing? I'm struggling, and I was trying to do it on my own, and I realized that's not going to happen. That's not going to work for me anymore. And so if I'm going to get some type of peace, then I need to holler at you. So what do we need to do? And so I had, like a couple years before this, I had a friend who had mentioned a church that she went to. And I kind of like always just kept it in the back of my mind, but I had never visited. And so one day I actually went and visited, and I was like, okay, like it felt good to be back in church, like and be in community. And I was like, okay, cool. Like it's still not what I'm used to, but I'm like open. And I know, and I was intentional about, I need to reestablish my relationship with Christ based upon who I am now, and not the relationship that was established for me through my parents or through the connection to my church, but an actual authentic connection with Christ. And so, so I feel like that's why my attitude was different about it. It was like, okay, let me go in. And, I sat in the back row, just kind of was like, I'm gonna just, fill it out or whatever. And I had one of the pastors, came up to me after church and was like, oh, like, I haven't seen you before, what's your name? Da, 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 blah, blah. She's like, okay, nice to meet you, whatever. And I was like, okay, didn't think too much about it. But I was like, I came back the next week or maybe the week after that, and she remembered my name. And I was like, oh, because I'm used to coming from a mega church, where you have a core set of people at church, but like for one of the pastors to be like, oh, I met you last week, I remembered your name. So that stood out to me and made me really be like, okay, well, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. Because, they say that, the Lord knows you by name, right? He places every hair on your head. So I was like, the fact that she remembered my name stood out to me for whatever reason. And so I kept going. I was like, okay, still, music was different. It was real Christian contemporary. I'm used to gospel, but I was like, okay, I kind of like this song. That's cool, and I was like, still just open. My heart was open in a different way than it had been before. And so eventually what happened is, I would go to stuff. I kind of started going to the sisterhood ministry. But I was kind of one of the younger ones in the group. And so I was like, is this for me? Is this not? I don't know. But I would go because I was like, I want that connection. And then I started going they have a young adult ministry. And at first, it was framed kind of around college kids. I was like, well, I'm a grad student. I'm older, than like the 20 through 22. I'm like 25, 26. So I was like, should I go? One of my friends was like, yeah, I go. And like that really, I think, spearheaded something in me to be like, I've been stagnant because of me. Not because God hasn't been moving, but because I've been like, it needs to be this way, it needs to look that way, and not wanting to let go of that control. And so as I got a part of the the young adult ministry, making connections and stuff, I don't know, I think somewhere in my spirit, I've always had a passion for youth. And so one of the people that I knew that was over the youth at the time, you know, I'd mentioned like, hey, maybe I have some ideas or I can help you out with some events or something, just like some casual, you know, and I didn't really know at the time that I was really getting ready to take over the youth ministry. Yeah, because I was like, God, like I was just gonna come casually, and now we having planning meetings, but I'm really doing the planning, you know. And so it was very unexpected, and even when that opportunity came, I was like, well, I don't know, because you know, to be in ministry, you really need to be like a saint. And I was like, I know me, and I know what I am on, like what I do on the rest of the week that may not be like really role model type things. Um, and so I was like, you know, I don't know, like, you know, because I had the mentality that you need to be perfect. And I know nobody's perfect, but you need to be as close to Jesus as possible if you're going to be in ministry. And I really found out like that's not the case. You know, youth want to see that you're real, and they want to know that you are not out here like, oh, you can't have no fun ever if you're a Christian. You know,
that part.
Right. You know, because that's what they think. Like, oh man, if I do this, I can't be doing nothing. Like, I can't be, you know, and that's not the approach that I take. You know, I see where they're at. I'm like, okay, cool. But like, let's do this. Let's get out of our comfort zone a little bit more. You know, is this gonna, you know, kill you to pray for somebody or ask somebody if they need prayer? No. You know, and so I think as I was growing through the young adult ministry, it was putting things, or not really putting in things, but taking things out that I needed to share with other people. And so I started getting involved in the youth ministry to the point where, you know, the pastor was like, will you be the youth lead? And I was like, I mean, you know, he probably asked me like 3 good times before I was like, okay, you know, but again, it was fear of like, am I going to live up to this expectation? You know, but not knowing that God, you know, wants obedience, not sacrifice. Absolutely. And so I was like, if I'm really going to do what I say that I'm going to do and really want this connection with God, then I need to be able to be in ministry. And so basically that led to 2-3 years hanging out with the youth ministry, implementing some things, having, you know, we started doing a youth Sunday. One of the last few youth Sundays that I was a part of, the pastor asked me to give the message, which is something that I never would have thought that I would do ever. But it really was, you know, once I thought about it, and again, he had to ask me about 3 times and volunteer me that I was going to do it. But eventually I was like, you know, I can't ask the youth to stand out on faith and share their gifts if I'm not willing to do the same things. So I was like, in order to hold true to them, then I need to do that as well. And so, yeah, so I gave the message and got a lot of good feedback. And I was like, and so, you know, people was like, you gonna open a church? I'm like, hold on, wait now. You know, but yeah, so really just, you know, it took me from a little seed to a full tree. I felt like just bridging the gap between my, you know, relationship with Christ as a youth then to now.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing her say, Spark Tomorrow, to the youth and to the adults that are listening, is that have no fear that if you put that seed in your child, they may stray, take a few turns, do a few things Monday through Friday, but there is just a God-sized hole that she couldn't feel anywhere else. It did take to her master's degree to realize, you know, it's not God that has left me. I've left his side. He's been there moving on my behalf, and I've been ducking and dodging, doing my online TV ministry, but it wasn't fulfilling. And to the ministers that are out there that probably have tuned in, know people's name, look at people in the eye. Eyes are the windows to the soul, and somebody wants to hear you call them by name. And I'm pretty sure that minister had no idea what that seed was doing in her life, to look at her and say, how are you, Alexia? I met you once. So that's just a story for everybody involved. For the parents that are sending your kids off, they'll find their way. To the ministers, know people by name and greet them. And to that person that's off in college and you're like, am I too far gone? No. And then for those of us that are challenging the youth to spark tomorrow and take a leap of faith, we got to do the same thing. And I also heard her say we have to be approachable and not look too pious, or we won't reach the youth and where they are. So you answered my next question, which was, did you find a carbon copy of St. John? No, but she quit putting up all the barriers and let herself open her heart to the ministry that that church could offer, and grew, she said, from a little seed to where she is now. That is awesome. So we're
Can I
gonna
interject?
Yeah.
Can I interject? I will say, since you asked that the next question was going to be a carbon copy, they're actually opposite churches. Like one is Southern, Baptist, mega church, all Black. This one is probably 200 or so members, kind of a transient population because we're college town, multi-ethnic, Christian contemporary music. So very different. But the thing that I appreciated about it is that it got me out of my comfort zone in different ways. Like before, just a quick example is when I was younger at church, whenever worship time came on, I would sing the song, but I was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like I came for praise. Like I came to clap. I came to, get the word, whatever. And then now, as I've gone to the church in Iowa, I appreciate worship. And, before I didn't understand people putting their hands up and, doing all this extra is what I deemed it at the time. But now I was like, that's because they're having a connection with God in that moment. So now, I'll raise my hands, or I might, kneel in prayer in the middle of worship and that type of stuff. But that was something that I don't think I would have ever done had I not gone to a church that encouraged me to be different than what I had been doing.
Wow, stir up the gifts that are inside us. And God, to me, has a way of stirring up the gifts in ways that we never saw coming. Total opposite. But I also heard you say you open up your heart to the new.
Yep.
And because you open up your heart to the new, now when you come back to the old, you see the old in a whole new perspective.
Yep.
Wow. So we're going to now get a little bit deeper into your college experience. And if y'all have noticed, last week I had the ball cap on and I had to appeal to the 17-year-old boy. But ladies and gentlemen, I have a lady of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated on the air with us. So I knew I had to spruce myself up a little bit because I knew she would come suited and booted. So why did you choose Alpha Kappa Alpha? And do you see, because people, I see the YouTube clips, how this sorority took me away from Jesus, and this sorority is of the devil and it's a cult and you're the Illuminati. Talk to me. You're a young lady, not even old. You have nothing to hide. Do you see, why did you choose that organization? Does it hinder? Does it enhance? Does it add to your Christian faith?
I think it adds to my Christian faith. So yeah, I see those videos too of people that are like, oh, this is like, adultery and, whatever.
I denounced Alpha,
right.
Alpha.
I'm like, all right, do your
I'm
thing.
done.
I'm like, okay. I would say for me, when it came to joining a Greek letter organization, one, I paid attention to people who like helped me grow up and the type of women that they were, were they affiliated with the organization and how did they carry themselves? So there were some women that it was like, they were really substantial in, especially during the high school years and things like that, of helping me grow myself to be, where I am. And so honestly, at the time, looking at those women, they're actually not a part of the organization that I'm in. But I think for me, it was like, okay, I would see them. They never were like, oh, I'm in this org. But you would kind of see like keychains or, something in their office or, that you would see and you're like, oh, I wonder what that's about. And so what I did is I did research. I was like, what is this about? What is this organization about? Why would anybody want to? And I think for me, the biggest thing was being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. If you think about it, really all of the organizations at the core have the same foundation, sisterhood, scholarship, service, right? It just look different. Some different colors. You might have different programs, that type of stuff. But all of it was with those in mind. And I was like, well, that's what I'm about generally. I think community is important, especially sisterhood. So that's important. I don't have sisters. And not that I necessarily was like, oh, I need one, but I was like, oh, there's an opportunity to have sisters that I haven't had before. Scholarship, I was always about my academics, even though, my first semester didn't look like it, but I was all about that. So I was like, yes. And then of course, service, again, if I have anything, I want to be able to give that to other folks. So those are the things I was like, okay, cool. And so if you ask anybody who's Greek, they're going to tell you, do your research. So that's what I did. And what that means is if you're thinking about being Greek, look at every organization, go to their website, look at what their principles are, get information to see what is a good fit for you, right? Because sometimes people join organizations and they're like, oh, well, they got a really cool stroll, or they have, this call, or I seen them and they were lit at this thing, but you don't know about these people, So
Right.
Really, for me, it was like, what do they stand for? And when I looked at all the organizations, I was like, okay, this organization seems to fit me best, right? Based upon the type of women that I have seen, based upon, what it says their ideals and things were, it helped, of course, being the first. I am, that is something that I was excited about, because I was like, that means that I'm joining an organization of trendsetters, right? Who paved the way for other organizations and felt that it was important for Black women to have this space, especially at a time where that was hard to do. So for me, I was like, okay, that's the organization I want to be a part of. And I think like once I got in, knowing that everything is based upon a Christian faith. So when you hear people like talking about like, oh, this is, you're idolizing your founders and this and that, it's like, no, we recognize, we appreciate their efforts, but it's not like I'm saying, this founder is more important than God. No. So when you think about it, to me, it was a part of, and it's a lifelong legacy. And I think that's the thing that stood out to me more so than maybe some other Greek organizations that's only for college, but this is something that, you don't just do when you're in college. You can join, you should join a graduate chapter and continue your service. So that way you're always about service. For us, one of our mottos is service to all mankind. So you're always about that and being able to do that for the rest of your life. And not that you can't do it on your own, but to have that accountability and to be around like-minded individuals who they're about that, to me, was really important.
Awesome. So you've segued us right into where we like to end with Spark Tomorrow. I'm hearing Alexia say that it was awesome to be a part of something that was bigger than her. And that while there may be founders of her organization, the founders are not here above the God she serves or her Christian faith. And so I would like to pause at this time to make sure that if there's young or old out there and you don't know the Christian faith as Alexia and myself know it, if you don't know the God that we're talking about serving, you could turn to your Bibles and look at Romans 10:9. And it's basically, I like to keep it real simple, the ABCs. It's accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and that he died on the cross and rose from his sin. Believe that in your heart and confess that with your mouth. Salvation is not this wide, it's not that tall. We can't buy it. We can't pledge to get into it. We just have to do those ABCs, as Romans 10:9 says. And then we have to believe that once we've accepted that as she said, she didn't move. I mean, God didn't move, but she moved. And we have to understand that once we accept him as our Lord and Savior, he starts to move in our lives. He starts to touch our heart. He starts to change our talk, change our walk. We don't become perfect youth. Minister K at the church, I can still do that minute walk and have a good time, but I understand that I'm connected to the true vine. And because I'm connected to the true vine, sometimes there's a grace in my pathway that I have not earned. Sometimes there's mercies that are granted to me that I know I didn't even sign up for, but because I'm his child and because of his namesake, there's certain failures and there's certain things in my path that he's not going to even let happen because I'm connected to something greater than me. And because I'm connected to that true vine, so I want to make sure that there's someone listening and you have not accepted him, do so. Watch your life slowly change. Watch people around you start to say there's something different about you. And then you turn and do what for them what just happened for you on this show right now. Give them God, give them Romans 10:9. Young people, look that up. If you're following people on a channel, if you're following people on the radio and they cannot bring it back to scripture, do not follow. It has to be written, because if not, I'm connecting you to me and I'm not connecting you to God. So with that being said, Miss Alexia is gifted and talented in so many ways. And I know she was doing some things there in Iowa, but I want to ask you as well, do you mentor? And if so, if there's a young lady that connects to this, or a young man, but someone says, you know what, I'm in my college years, I'm stumbling, I'm kind of walking aimlessly, you know, I would love to connect with the younger, or this way, the younger face. They'll know how to contact me, but I want, if you are available, what would be a way for someone to connect with you if you make yourself available for mentoring?
Yeah, so I'm all about mentorship, because I feel like I wish people would have told me stuff instead of letting me struggle through it. And so I'm always willing to be of service in that way. I have served as a graduate student mentor for 3 women of color who have different paths and ways and different majors and whatnot. But I have helped them, and I'm passionate about helping youth. So yes, so if you are like, oh, okay, she's like kind of cool or maybe even dope, you can hit me up, or you can hit up Minister K and get in contact with her, and she'll put you in contact with me. But yeah, if you want some guidance and don't feel like you can ask your parents, or you can ask, you know, people in church or whatnot, you don't have to worry about being, you know, all the way, you know, correct in things with me, but just be honest. If you just want somebody to be able to give you some guidance, I'm totally willing to do that. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, we are winding down episode 2 of Spark Tomorrow Ministries here. You all, the way to contact me, I'm gonna get my life right this way. Spark Tomorrow at Gmail. What are we about? We're a ministry. We just want to spark tomorrow. We know that if people my age, people get that way, Alexia's age, if we don't reconnect with the youth that are trying to figure it out like we were trying to figure it out, the future is very dark. And I am determined that as long as God gives me breath, I will be on someone's team with some cheerleaders cheering them forward, because there were wonderful women in my life and in my family that cheered me forward, that dusted me off through life's bumps and bruises and mistakes and heartaches. And so I would be less than a Christian woman if I didn't do the same for those that are out there. So we hope that you connect. We hope that you've learned a lot from this young lady. The big pieces that I took away is, 1, follow wisdom. She was listening to wisdom along the way. She is unashamedly, unapologetically herself. She's been encouraged to be herself. She's encouraging you to be yourself. And then no matter how far you grow, because she already had a bachelor's, you all, she was working through her master's, there was still this God-sized hole that she couldn't feel, that only serving in a body of believers, that only pouring back into others could really quench what was empty in her life. So we're encouraging you to listen to wisdom. We're encouraging you to be unashamedly, apologetically yourself, and then make sure that you stay connected to the true vine so that your life does have purpose and it's not empty. And I gotta close with, isn't she beautiful, y'all? Look at her hair and that smile. Oh my gosh, she is her mother's child, which I'm my mother's child, but I'm just saying, God bless you, and thank you for being on the set with me. I will put this flame in the street, because this episode is hot. I'm gonna put this flame in the street tomorrow after I get out the green room. Lionsgate, Harpo Studios, Warner Brothers, we coming for you. Oh yeah.